DC Comics is rebooting Batman, and it's written by Matt Fraction with art from Jorge Jimenez. I'm so excited about this. So, what this does is this opens up with Jim Gordon, who's actually back to being a cop. If you guys recall, Jim Gordon retired, right? That took place before the Joker solo series, and he basically became a private investigator. But there's also a new cop on the scene, right? Officer Espinoza. And the funny thing about this is that while the two of them are just kind of sharing a coffee and Jim Gordon's doing his thing, that what ends up happening is Killer Croc shows up, right? Starts tearing things up, tears apart this fresh meat truck, and then bails out. And initially Espinoza's like, we got to do something, right? We got to respond. We got to act. And Jim Gordon's just like, slow your roll, right? One of the things you learn in being in Gotham for quite some time is you learn to call for backup. And at that point, you switch over to Batman, who looks fantastic. Now, the cool thing about this is that his conversation here, right, really revolves around Killer Croc. And literally he's told, we're as shocked as you, Batman. Waylon Jones self-reported for treatment and could have left any time he wished. This containment unit was built to withstand a bomb blast. And that's kind of the funny thing, is the response of Batman is, you're new here, Doctor. Killer Croc has not been Waylon Jones for a long time. I try to keep them separate. In my mind, it's easier that way when they inevitably disappoint you. Now, you kind of have a clash of ideologies here, right? A more forward-thinking or progressive doctor, if you want to see her that way, and Batman, who's just like, they're a criminal, we got to beat them up. But no, in his mind, it's kind of easier to separate Waylon Jones from Killer Croc because there is a bit of more cynical take that goes on, and you guys will see what I'm talking about here. But she says, Waylon may be a supervillain to you, but he's a patient to me. Waylon Jones is changing Batman. He's shedding his skin, but it continued deeper, as though he were shedding everything inside and out. And this is the more cynical take of Batman, right? His response, people never change. Not really. Now, that line's going to be pretty controversial among Batman fans. And the reason why is because kind of a hallmark of Batman is this idea that he always believes that people can be redeemed. If that wasn't the case, he wouldn't keep handing people over to Arkham Asylum so that Arkham could potentially cure them, right? He would probably just put one in their dome piece or just say, throw them in a prison, just leave them there and call it a day. And so it kind of flies in the face of what a lot of people might consider to be the traditional Batman mythos, which is calls for redemption. But that's why she responds, tell that to Waylon, right? He's been exposed to unknown metamorphotoxins with unpredictable results. He's regressing, gentle, almost childlike, but then he does something like this, right? And that's where Batman says, but then your mutating, man-killing monster baby wanted to go out and play. But she responds, she says, he may be capable of great violence, but he's capable of great tenderness too, curiosity even, wonder. But right now, he's afraid, and fear prevents us from having a say in how our minds respond to the chaos of trauma, but it requires trust, care, and time. And that's kind of the clash of ideologies here. You could go so far as to say she's kind of making an argument of like excusing bad behavior, but the reality here is she's kind of looking at it from both sides. Sure, he's a villain and he does villainous things, but not everything he does is nefarious. He is becoming a child, and for a child, they cannot differentiate between right and wrong. Right? And so that's why Batman responds in saying, time is the one thing that we're out of, Dr. Zeller. Have you already called the cops? And she's like, I may be new, Batman, but I'm not stupid. And so Batman's response, of course, is like, when the time comes, stall. Right? Like, just don't tell them everything. Do enough to basically keep them at bay. And that's where you switch over to Vandal Savage, the commissioner of Gotham City. Now, for those of you guys who were new to the Batman comics, Vandal Savage has been commissioner of Gotham since Dark Prisons. When Jim Gordon basically walked away and became a private detective, the character Renee Montoya took his place. And then ultimately she was out, and then Vandal Savage became the new commissioner. He's none too friendly to Batman because, of course, he's traditionally a Justice League villain. So that would make sense. But while I wouldn't go so far as to say he's always using the Gotham police force as a way to destroy Batman, he's certainly not allowing Batman the kind of leeway he had in the past under Jim Gordon, which was working alongside the Gotham City Police Department as much as Batman could, right? Having an ear on the inside. The Gotham City PD is a big no-go when it comes to Batman, so none of their resources or anything. But one of the things to keep in mind, and kind of the undercurrent plot for Vandal Savage as commissioner, is he's largely been trying to use it for his own ends. I don't know this so much as like seizing power of the city. The guy's been around for 50 some odd thousand years. The idea of him just trying to acquire huge measures of power and control a town is sort of beyond him, right? But the fact is, he is using it for his own nefarious purposes. This is kind of private police force. And that's why he introduces the tactical urban combat officers, right? Basically paramilitary, for lack of a better word, right? He basically tells the cops, they're here to assist you in your peacekeeping duties. But as usually the case when someone nefarious brings in a paramilitary force, it's really more to contain and control. And then the time will come when cops just won't have their roles anymore, and they'll be taken over by all the tactical urban combat officers. So that's kind of the concern here, right? Now, it's not enough that it's the main plot of the story, but it is Matt Fraction doing what writers like himself do, right? Jonathan Hickman, Brian Michael Bendis, building out these plot threads for future stories that will come along. And so at that point, you switch back over to Batman and Alfred Pennyworth. Now, here's a crazy thing, right? Because I know it's nuts to see that Alfred Pennyworth is back. I'm going to let you guys kind of figure out what's going on here, right? Because what happens is he's kind of snarky, right? As Alfred usually is, right? Rather moody and silent this evening, Master Bruce, right? Where, I wonder, are we going? And that's where Batman's just like playing a hunch, right? And so you do get a little bit of a discussion between himself and Alfred, not too huge about what the doctor said on whether or not people can ever actually change, but it's not a lengthy conversation, right? You know, cars get called and there's some kind of, incident going on in the park. And so Batman shows up to Robinson Park. And here's kind of the brutality of this new Batman under Matt Fraction. This guy comes flying in his Batmobile and runs these criminals over, right? These guys who were untoward with these young girls. And that's kind of the crazy thing is Batman just beats the crap out of these guys, right? He runs them over and then beats the tar out of them. Now, maybe it's just traditional Batman, your mileage may vary, but it seems pretty brutal, right? And so that's why he tells the girls, these creeps have decided that Robinson Park is their hunting ground. The police don't think it merits concern, but I disagree. And he says, sorry I couldn't get to you sooner, but you both need trauma and medical care. And then ultimately he just kind of leaves them. Now he leaves his car there, right, in order to basically make sure that they're safe. But one of the things that he realizes is attached to this girl is a butterfly. And at that point, he's like, okay, this thing's pretty far from home. It's not native to here, meaning they got it from somewhere else. They were running from a location. I need to follow that location back. And it's kind of Batman just following clues. Now, what's kind of interesting about this is nothing on the surface really seems to indicate that, like, it would lead him to Killer Croc. But nonetheless, Batman plays a hunch. And it's kind of obvious Killer Croc is here, because once he actually gets to this place, the dome on top is torn open, cars in the parking lot are trashed. Yeah, man, Killer Croc has been here. And so that's the crazy thing, is because Alfred is here yet again. And he says, oh dear, what a mess. And Batman talks to him, right? He's like, Killer Croc is here. Trail of blood spatter leads from here to the exhibit hall. So it has to be Croc. And so Batman, of course, ends up entering into this place only to find there's like a security guard and a couple of civilians. And so it's kind of nuts, right? Because at that point, Killer Croc is just like sitting there staring off at these butterflies, which of course, all of them that are surrounding him are the same one that Batman had, right? So just connecting the dots here. And initially the security guard is like gonna open fire on Killer Croc. And Batman's like, that's a really bad idea. Because number one, bullets won't work. And number two, all you're gonna do is piss him off. And then we get this cool bit of a modification, right? Kind of an upgrade of sorts. He says, contact Dr. Zeller at Arkham Towers. Do not call the police. And so when the security guard is like, what are you going to do? The response of Batman, strike a little terror into his heart. Because what Batman has here are bat gauntlets, right? Electro-charged personal nullifiers with a 250 charge. These are more than enough to help someone understand their place in the bigger picture, if you get what I'm saying. And so Killer Croc comes running up on Batman, just like Batman expected, and what you would expect Killer Croc to do. And that's why he's like, let's get this over with. But Killer Croc kind of dismisses him, right? And again, kind of speaking in broken English, he says, you bad, so go. And that's where Alfred chimes in, right? And he says, Master Bruce, what if this Dr. Zeller is correct? Some creatures do, in fact, change? What if some eternal cycle has begun within him again, even if only for this moment, and he's become something like a child alone in a violent, terrible world he cannot understand, drowning in fear? If it's as you say, and no one ever really changes, Master Bruce, then surely you know how that feels. And it's a very direct statement, right? Because you were that child once, Bruce. You were that little kid crying out with his mommy and daddy shot dead in an alley somewhere. So surely at the very least, you can relate to that. And this is one of the things that I love about Matt Fraction, because then he gives us the other side. For all the darker nature of Batman in the story so far, as brutal as he is, as dope as he is, he also has a far more tender side. Because instead of just telling Alfred, the heck with it, man, let's just pummel this guy, take him back to Arkham, he actually sits down with him, right? And just talks to him. And he says, like, Waylon, I used to have one of these in my house, right? This great big huge Tyrannosaurus Rex. And that's where Waylon's just like, big house, right? And Bruce is like, yeah, it was a pretty big house. And that's where Waylon is just like, you head new now. And Bruce is like, I mean, if you say so. And the response of Croc, me head new, but bad now, lost. And he's like, I ate the zoo. And Batman's response is everything. He's like, I know you did, buddy. I know. I love this side of Batman. Like, I love this version of Batman. That shot right there is going to be all over Twitter. I can guarantee it. But he says, him head like me up there. And that's where Batman's like, how so? Right? Do you mean like a king? And the response of Croc? No, right? Mean bad, scary, hungry, can't think, head bad, maybe am bad. And that's where the good doctor shows up again. And she shows up with like a little Tyrannosaurus, right? She's like, I'm here to help. Do you want me to help? Would you like to come home? And when she presents him with this little Tyrannosaurus, Killer Croc is excited, right? He looks so ecstatic over getting his toy back. And that's kind of the funny thing. It's because she says, you made a bad choice, Waylon. Now you can make a good choice. Come home. Let me help you. And his response, okay. And he says, home now, she help. And he asks, who help you? And the response of Batman, like, my head's okay, Waylon. I don't need help. And it's just like, if you say so, because as you guys have probably figured out by now, Alfred's not actually there, right? That's the crazy thing, because at that point, he actually gets the little toy from Killer Croc. Killer Croc gives it to him, and Batman just puts it in a display case with so many other things. And at that moment, he's hit up by Robin, right? And he's just like, so do you have any ears on you? And Batman's like, always, Robin, like, it's an emergency line. And that's where Batman's asked, is there anybody on the police force that we're friendly with these days? And the response of Batman, like, I don't like the sound of that. And he's like, why? And the reason why is because Robin's in an alley being told by the cops to put his hands in the air. This dude is on the verge of being under arrest. I gotta tell you guys, man, like, I love this first issue of the Matt Fraction run, but be aware, for those of you guys who are out there, Matt Fraction can go either way. He can do a very, very cerebral story, or he can do a very straightforward, action-packed story. Matt Fraction's run on Iron Man, on Iron Fist, a lot of those are kind of the same way. So I'm really excited to see where all this goes. But with that being said, guys, we're going to bring this to an end. Hopefully you enjoyed this video. If you did, drop a like. Thank you all for watching, and I will catch you all later. Peace.